When the Second World War ended, a giant returned to the North Atlantic. A fish so abundant, so vital to economies, that it shaped the lives of entire nations. The Norwegian spring-spawning herring. In the early 1950s, this stock was one of the largest in the world. Its total biomass was around 15 to 20 million tons. The spawning stock alone was nearly 10 million tons, a resource of remarkable scale, supporting fleets from Norway, Iceland, the Faroe Islands, the Soviet Union, and many other European nations. But within 20 years, this vast stock would be gone. Not diminished, not harmed, but nearly wiped out. In the post-war years, the herring migrated in great shoals across the northeast Atlantic. They hatched in western Norway during spring. In summer, they drifted north and west to feed in the Norwegian Sea and near Iceland. Then, as winter approached, they returned to the Norwegian coast. Because these fish migrated freely, they became a common resource. No country owned them, so many nations fished for them. Throughout the 1950s, annual catches were already enormous, often exceeding 1 million tons each year. Yet fishing mortality was still regarded as relatively low. This was the golden age. Herring supported jobs, factories, shipyards, and the very heart of coastal life. But beneath the surface, a change was approaching. By the early 1960s, the fishery shifted almost overnight. New technologies appeared. The power block, a mechanized net haulier that enabled purse seine vessels to manage large nets easily. Sonar and acoustic fish finders provided fleets with the ability to locate shoals with unprecedented accuracy. Fishing that once depended on luck and experience now relies on machines. The high seas remained open. No international system regulated how much any nation could take. There were no binding restrictions. As the technology became more efficient, each fleet pushed harder. A competition for fish started. Throughout the early 1960s, catches increased rapidly. Then came a turning point. The 1959 year class of herring, a large wave of young fish, entered the fishery. Landings surged. By 1965, catches had reached 1.3 million tons. In 1966, the fishery reached its absolute peak, with around 2 million tons caught in a single year. 2 million tons, approximately 1/5 of the entire population. And yet the fleets persisted. The signs of trouble were evident, but they were easy to overlook. Many catches included large quantities of small, immature fish. These juvenile herring were harvested for meal and oil. The more the fleets caught, the fewer fish remained to grow and spawn. A future generation was being removed before it had a chance to replace the old. Meanwhile, the environment started to change. Ocean conditions in the late 1960s became less favorable. The East Icelandic current cooled, and food in key feeding grounds declined. Herring shifted their migrations eastwards and northwards, losing access to some of their richest feeding areas. After the strong 1959 year class, almost no successful year classes followed. Recruitment, the arrival of young fish into the adult stock, nearly failed. This combination was deadly. Intense fishing pressure, and almost no young herring to replace what was taken. By 1967, catches remained high. However, beneath those figures, the stock was declining rapidly. From 1968 onwards, the decline became apparent to all. Catches declined sharply. By 1969 and 1970, the fishery produced almost nothing. The figures were shocking. A stock that once exceeded 10 million tons had plummeted to under 10,000 tons, a near extinction. The herring ceased migrating offshore. They stayed in small, weakened groups along the Norwegian coast. On the traditional spawning grounds in 1970 and 1971, no spawning was observed at all. The giant had collapsed. By around 1970, the collapse was complete. The herring stock, once one of the largest in the world, had decreased to less than 10,000 tons. The fishery that once yielded over 2 million tons was now at zero. Traditional spawning grounds went silent. No spawning events were recorded in 1970 or 1971. Only a small, weakened population remained. These fish no longer ventured into the Norwegian Sea. They stayed in coastal waters all year round, a remnant of the stock that once crossed oceans. Scientists and fishermen realized they were witnessing one of the most dramatic fish stock collapses ever recorded. Herring are not just another fish. They are a vital part of the marine food web, feeding on plankton and providing sustenance for creatures above them, such as cod, halibut, whales, and seabirds. When they disappeared, the ecosystem underwent significant changes. Predators relying on herring faced difficulties in finding alternatives. Some seabird colonies experienced breeding failures. Larger fish altered their feeding patterns. Although the data from the 1970s is limited, the absence of a stock of this size must have transformed the ecosystems of the Norwegian Sea and the Barents Sea. The decline of the herring was not just an economic loss, it was an ecological shock. Along the coasts of Norway, Iceland, the Faroes, and northwest Russia, entire towns relied on herring. When the fish disappeared, so too did the means of living. In Norway, parts of the fleet had to be scrapped or redirected to other species. Factories closed or shifted to new raw materials. Salt curing, meal production, and boat building, entire industries suffered heavy losses. In Iceland, the impact was even more severe. Herring accounted for nearly half of the country's export income in the late 1960s. When the stock collapsed, unemployment soared. Towns like Siglufjordur, once thriving hubs of the herring trade, experienced a decline in population on a scale unseen since the 19th century. A fish stock had collapsed, but so had a way of life. Faced with disaster, governments acted. In 1970, a complete ban on herring fishing was enforced. Norway completely shut down its herring fishery. Iceland and other countries ceased targeting the spring-spawning stock. However, these actions were taken too late. Managers later acknowledged that restrictions in 1968 and 1969 had been far too weak. By the time effective measures were implemented, the spawning stock was already close to depletion. Throughout the 1970s, the fishery remained shut. Some small-scale coastal, small herring fisheries for meal and oil persisted in limited amounts. But adult fishing was essentially non-existent. Scientists observed closely. Year after year, recruitment stayed poor. Each new year class of herring through the 1970s was weak. Recovery appeared uncertain. Then, during the early 1980s, things shifted. A robust year class arose. The 1983 year class was strong, the first solid group of young fish in decades. When these fish matured in 1986 and 1987, the spawning stock increased again. The herring had survived. With cautious optimism, the fishery gradually reopened in the late 1980s under strict quotas. This time, management was conservative. Juvenile catches were limited, total allowable catches remained low. Gradually, the stock was rebuilt. By the 1990s, the herrings were once again migrating across borders, through the waters of Norway, the EU, Iceland, the Faroes, Russia, and international seas. This presented a new challenge: how to oversee a shared stock without replicating the chaos of the 1960s. Negotiations commenced. For the first time, all major countries agreed on shared quotas. By 1997, Norway, Russia, Iceland, the Faroe Islands, and the European Union had harmonized catch limits. In 1999, they adopted a long-term harvest control rule. If the spawning stock fell too low, fishing would be reduced or stopped. If the stock was healthy, catches could increase, but only within safe limits. Science now takes the lead. It took over 20 years for the herring to return to safe levels. The collapse revealed several harsh truths to the world. Even a vast stock can be wiped out by unregulated fishing. Technological advances must be paired with strong management. Nations need to collaborate when stock crosses borders. Environmental changes can exacerbate the damage caused by overfishing. Sometimes the only way to recover is a complete shutdown. Decades later, the rise, collapse, and recovery of the Norwegian spring spawning herring remains one of the most significant lessons in global fisheries history. A reminder that the sea is plentiful, but not infinite.